You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
But right now, we start our conversation with David Smith, who is the Washington bureau chief for the Guardian newspaper, who speaks to us now about that decision that Donald Trump, the president of the U.S., made to suspend these strikes on Iran's power plants. And I recorded this conversation with David Smith quite early this morning before we started the show at 9 o'clock. And I started by asking him what the reaction is. Is this an exit strategy from what he's hearing in Washington, D.C.? Is this an acceptance of defeat? Or does the U.S. president has a plan up his sleeve?
I think there's a great deal of confusion and disarray and just not knowing if Donald Trump has any clear pathway here or strategy at all. Of course, over the weekend, he had threatened to unleash dire destruction on Iran's power plants. And Iran had warned in retaliation it would target energy infrastructure in the Middle East region. That could have been absolutely crippling to the entire global economy. And so suddenly on Monday, Trump did back away from that and claim that there'd actually been talks underway for a couple of days with Iran, and they were making good progress. They were hoping to make a deal. So that seemed positive, but Iran denied any such talks were taking place, just further deepening the confusion. And Iran claimed this is just Trump's way to buy some time because he's worried about what this will do to the oil markets and the economic disruption it will cause. And so we remain with huge question marks, really. And quite a few commentators in the US have pointed out it's a very rare situation where you don't know whether to trust the American president or trust a theocratic, corrupt regime in Iran. But it has really come to this, given that Trump has been caught making some false statements in the past.
Yeah, and of course, as you say, there are false statements that have been made in the past, so you just never know where things are now. Is this true or is it not? But just to understand, though, what has been the U.S.'s role and actions in recent times? So over the last week, for instance, have they continued to target and fire missiles at Iran, or that was more led by Israel?
Oh, yes, the U.S. is still very heavily involved in the military operation, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said on Thursday that would be the biggest package yet of military ordnance and missiles. And I think in the days since, they kept up that pace. Certainly, Israel is very heavily involved as well, and said it launched a wide-scale strikes on Iran on Monday morning. And of course, Iran is firing back and launched some missiles at the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and has targeted Israel itself. And so while Trump waffles about diplomacy and talks and supposedly trying for a deal, the war continues to rage, and the very few journalists who've been able to get on the ground in Iran do describe scenes of devastation with many innocent civilians killed. There's been estimates of at least 1,400 deaths in Iran. Buildings that have nothing to do with the war being flattened, and a scene of destruction there. And I think there's great concern, how does the US extricate itself from this conflict, given that Iran has blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, and that means oil shipping can't get out, and that has big implications for energy markets.
Yeah. And I wonder if President Donald Trump feels like he's now caught between a rock and a hard place, because speaking of the Strait of Hormuz, it's almost like he tried to get the even NATO partners or European partners to assist. Many of them have said, we're not getting involved in that. And now it's almost like, he's now pushed to the negotiating table because there are people that he thought were going to assist that have not come through to the party.
Yes, he really did seem to have this assumption that all the Western allies would come running. And of course, when they said thanks but no thanks, this is not our war and our populations have no interest in this, Trump lashed out and described them as cowards and said NATO is a paper tiger and it's really sour relations with, for example, Keir Starmer, the British leader. And yes, it does leave Trump in this dilemma now. He can, walk away tomorrow and try to declare victory, but that will ring rather hollow with the Iranian regime still very much in place and the Strait of Hormuz still blockaded. Or he has to intensify and he has sent thousands of Marines into the region. There's certainly a lot of speculation that some sort of military offensive, maybe around the island of Hague, is planned. We could see American boots on the ground. And the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, just on Sunday described this as escalating in order to de-escalate. As you can imagine, got some criticism for that. So, yes, between a rock and a hard place and no obvious way out. And I think one of the theories here is that Trump enjoyed a lot of success bombing Iran last year and capturing the leader of Venezuela and got carried away thinking he was invincible. But this particular issue is much more complicated.
Yeah. From the beginning, David, the intention was regime change. Israel was very clear about it. Donald Trump, when he announced that they had struck Iran, he called on the people of Iran to rise up against the regime. And in fact, when I was listening to that interview that the former director of counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, did with Tucker Carlson, he indicated there that if you kill, for instance, the religious leader, the Ayatollah, the regime survives. And it looks like this was a miscalculation from Israel and US's strategy. They thought, let's strike and then let's get the people to rise up. But we haven't really seen any protests calling for regime change, have we?
No, almost none. I believe in Iran, although information is hard to come by, but basically people have been told if they protest, they will be arrested or killed. It's still extremely difficult to express political voice in that way. And yes, there are slightly divergent goals here, and I think Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel is totally committed to regime change. I think Trump and the US probably saw it as a bonus. And in those opening remarks on the first day of the war, Trump did suggest this was a historic opportunity for the people to rise up. And I think both of them probably did, yes, make a miscalculation, assuming that would be easier than it actually is. We've heard rhetoric from Trump talking about, we've taken out the top leaders and then the tier below that and the tier below that, and implying that counts as some sort of regime change. But in reality, that regime is still in place despite having lost numerous personnel. And they're determined to fight on, to not give in. For them, victory is purely survival. If the regime is still in place, then the Iranians will feel that they've won. And it may be the case that the US has to give up on that goal. No particular alternative to it. Again, I think they hoped the Ayatollah would be replaced by somebody more compliant, as we saw in that case with Venezuela after Maduro. And yet, in fact, it was the Ayatollah's son who was described as even more of a hardliner, just a bit, several decades younger. So that whole regime change plan has certainly not worked out so far.
Yeah. Is there still coordination, or let me call it alignment, between Israel and the US in as far as strategy is concerned towards this war? Because just a week ago, the largest natural gas field was attacked by Israel. That's the South Pass gas field, which is shared by Iran and Qatar. And President Trump said that they knew nothing about this attack by Israel and made an assurance that no more attacks will be made by Israel on this important infrastructure. I mean, this for me was quite an interesting response from Donald Trump and sort of gave you a sense of how he seemed to disagree with the action by Israel on that important energy infrastructure, because my understanding was that he made it clear energy infrastructure is a no-go zone.
Which made it all the more curious when Trump himself was then threatening to target energy infrastructure and just underlined some of the contradictions here and altering signals. I think in broad terms, the US and Israel have been closely aligned, and the military cooperation is strong and impressive, everything they've been able to achieve in terms of degrading the Iranian defenses. But when you look closer, yes, there are some disagreements, such as the example you give. There's certainly different strategic objectives in the medium to long term. I think Netanyahu sees this as a decades-long project to remove the Iranian regime. And one former national security advisor in the US was just saying Israel has taken the view now that a broken Iran would be a positive development for them. Better just to have the country broken and falling apart than what they've lived with for decades. The US does not feel it has that luxury. It thinks a shattered country with potential civil war, with potentially millions of refugees, would obviously be a disaster for the region and the world, and could have all sorts of secondary consequences in terms of where do these refugees go and how they're treated by other countries. So I think it's one to watch, that it's a marriage of convenience at the moment. But yes, these two countries could diverge.
That's really fascinating. And just as we wrap up, I want to circle back to how we started this conversation. Donald Trump, of course, taking this decision to suspend strikes on Iranian power plants. Do we know what in these negotiations he's announced, what America is looking for? Is it looking for Iran to confirm we are not going to continue with enrichment, or we confirm that we are not going to build a nuclear weapon? Is there some kind of deal that he's trying to get into here about the nuclear weapons? Or do you, from the sense you're getting, the negotiations are more about just this current war and what the two parties need to do to try and get it to end?
Yeah, I mean, his comments to reporters on Monday were somewhat confusing, and he declined to say exactly who he's been talking to. Said it seemed to be a person at the top. He then talked about there were 15 points they were working on in a deal, but then he said, points 1 to 3 were Iran not having a nuclear weapon, and in this fog, it does seem if there's one goal that constantly comes up, it is denying Iran that capability. Trump has always said that's an absolute non-starter. Now, that might partly be Iran agreeing to that. It might also be the US saying we have to secure enriched uranium and either remove it or dilute it so it can't be used to build a nuclear weapon. We shall have to see about that. You would assume this these 15 points, or more accurately 13 points, would include something about reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So in the past, the US has also talked about ending Iran's support for terrorist proxy groups in the region. But ultimately, we don't entirely know, and we don't know who he was talking to. There's one report suggesting it was the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, although he seemed to deny that. And I think many people think it's more likely its intermediaries here, maybe not Trump himself, but interlocutors from Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan passing messages between the two countries.
Mm-hmm. And what are Americans thinking now about the war? I know there have been polls previously that have indicated a lot of them are not keen. What are we seeing now on the ground in America? Are more and more people warming up to this war in Iran?
Well, I stand by for Saturday when we have the third No Kings protest in the US, which is really opposition to what's perceived as Trump's authoritarianism. And all-time record numbers predicted there, maybe about 9 million, I think, and there's about 3,000 protests. And in the meantime, opinion polls are still strongly opposed to this war. I think many Republicans, many Trump supporters do welcome the idea of changing the Iranian regime, but they're much more lukewarm on just the idea of foreign interventions and very concerned about what effect it will have on not only the price of petrol, but other supermarket items, all of which could be affected by the energy crisis. So overall, yes, still broad public suspicion of this war. But unlike past presidents, Trump doesn't seem to care too much, and did not spend a lot of time trying to sell it to the public.
David Smith, thanks for making time for us.
Thank you.
He's the bureau chief in Washington, D.C. for the Guardian newspaper.
7:02.
The Clement Manyathela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
25 minutes after 10 o'clock. Let's bring in Dr Hamidreza Oraee, who is with the Iranian Embassy. He speaks on behalf of the Iranian Embassy. Dr. Oraee, thank you so much for also joining us. Good morning.
Morning, Clement. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. So President Trump yesterday announced that they are postponing military strikes on Iranian power plants. He said this is because there have been some good and productive discussions and conversations taking place over the last 2 days. But some Iranian officials yesterday came out and said that's not true. Are you able to explain to us what's going on?
Clement, I think that they decided to postpone what they call it, postpone the strike on the power plant because they knew that if they strike our power plant, they will see the consequences that will be so harsh for them. About the negotiations that they are talking about, as you heard from our officials in Iran, nothing happened yet. No discussion was there. For sure, we see negotiation and talking as the best way to solve all of the problems in the world. But there must be a guarantee for us to avoid any other attack against Iran.
Okay, and as it stands now, when you say that if they strike our power plants, there will be consequences, are we talking more about just the economic consequences and catastrophe globally, or are we now talking the Gulf countries neighboring you as Iran may also be targeted?
Clement, the consequences that I'm talking about is the principle of eye for eye. If our power plants has been under strike, so for sure, as our military commanders told, the assets of United States and the Zionist regime will be targeted. Also, the power plants in occupied lands will be targeted. So, other than the economic consequences that the world will suffer regarding that, our retaliation will be the same as they do to us. We will do the same to them.
But then how would you do to them? Because I imagine you wouldn't go and attack America's power plants. You would need to maybe attack, I don't know, countries that are offering
we have Israel.
the bases. Oh, there's Israel. So then they
Yes.
the attack would go via Israel. But what about the countries in the Gulf? Because that's been a concern. And I know the officials in your administration previously said we will not be targeting our neighbors anymore. So if Donald Trump, the president of the U.S., moves on these attacks after 5 days, if, God forbid, there's no agreement, will you target the neighboring countries, especially the ones that are offering U.S. bases?
See, the Persian Gulf countries who gave their soil and their airspace to USA and Israel, they faced some consequences that they saw. The military bases, the assets, and the hideouts of the U.S. regime and the Zionist regime will be our legitimate targets.
Okay, got you. Dr. Hamidreza Oraee, Iranian Embassy spokesperson here in South Africa, thank you so much for making time for us. As you hear there, they're not confirming the talks with the U.S. administration, and it could very well be their tactic. Maybe there are talks taking place. As I said earlier on the open line, war is not just about artillery, armory. It's also about information. It's also about how you position yourself in public, because you want to come across as a country of strength. Is that what Iran is saying here, is doing here by denying these talks? Is that what America is doing by confirming that there are these talks that are currently underway? Well, I guess we'll find out over the next 4 days. It's taking us to 10:30 now.